Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
And it's 5 minutes past 9. You're listening to SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. We'll be talking about the Black Business Council this morning. They were relaunched on the 1st of March and they were re-established after the black businesses felt that Business Unity South Africa did not have their interests at heart. It's been welcomed in some quarters and not so much in others. For example, the CEO of the Chamber of Mines, Bheki Sibiya, was quoted saying that the Black Business Council does not reflect the unity desired in the current society. He called it a racist organization, and you heard him again this morning on Xolani Gwala's AM Live here on SAFM. Well, this morning we're in conversation with columnist and author David Bullard, who penned a scathing piece also describing the BBC as a throwback to apartheid, saying we don't need such a body in a non-racial new South Africa. Now, we did invite the Black Business Council. They declined to participate in a debate at this time. They indicated, though, that they would be listening to this morning's discussion. But we'll hear from you on 0891104207, SMSs to 34701. Now, tomorrow, South Africa is going to be marking the 18th anniversary since the fall of Lucas Mangope's regime in the homeland of Bophuthatswana. We're going to revisit a bit of that history after 10. Then we're going to speak to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development after 10:30 about how one gets their criminal record expunged. Then after 11, we look at the amazing properties and uses of the amarula fruit and celebrating the 47th anniversary of our sister station, Mongana Lonene. So that's the program. Give us a call. The number to dial 0891104207. Send us an SMS to 34701. Those are charged at R2. You can email us at morning@safm.co.za.
Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
Talking about the Black Business Council this morning. It was relaunched, as I said, on the 1st of March after black businesses felt that Business Unity South Africa did not have their interests at heart. It seems negotiations had been taking place up until the decision was then taken to relaunch the Black Business Council. We're talking about opposition to it. This morning, earlier, you heard the CEO of the Chamber of Mines, Bheki Sibiya, thinking that the BBC does not reflect the unity that's desired in the current society. So this morning we're in conversation with columnist and author David Bullard, talking about his opposition to the Black Business Council, saying we don't need such a body in a non-racial new South Africa. As I indicated, we did extend an invitation to the council. They declined to participate in a debate at this time, saying though that they would be listening to the program this morning. We'll hear from you on 0891104207, SMSs to 34701. David, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Steve, for the invitation.
Well, let's maybe go back a little bit. I mean, we know Business Unity South Africa was formed in 2003. At that time, there was a feeling that there was a need for business to speak with one voice. And down the line now, we're in 2012, and things seem to have fallen apart.
They do, and I don't think it makes business look particularly good when you look at the infighting that there was at BUSA, or Business Unity South Africa, and when you really look at the infighting that there's been with Black Management Forum and various other groups. I think in a country that is looking to create jobs, we really do look at business leaders to be actually, as their name suggests, business leaders. And when you have almost, how long we've probably had pretty much a decade of squabbling, haven't we, in these groups, with people deciding that they don't want to work with other people. We can't afford this. I wouldn't go as far as saying that Black Business Council is racist, because I think it's an overworked word, and I think it sort of tends to send us down the wrong alley. I would say it's not constructive. And my objection to it is that I think that in a society which is supposedly non-racial, and we know that perhaps isn't the case if we live here, but that we're in transition, and I fully understand that it's only been 18 years. However, 18 years has allowed 3 lots of secondary school kids to go through school. We have to at some stage decide when we're going to be on our own, stand on our own 2 feet and be competitive. I think my problem with the Black Business Council is really the title.
Yeah.
And I know that they've said that they would accept other members. Well, then why give it the name Black Business Council? And it's not really local perceptions that I worry about as much as overseas perceptions, because we do have a reputation now of having a fair amount of corruption in this country. We have lagged behind in being a country in which it's desirable to do business, which is a dangerous thing because there is competition out there. We are sort of tacked on to the BRIC countries, but we don't seem to be contributing too much other than to say, would you like to dig our minerals up? And I think that perception overseas, that if you looked at something in South Africa 18 years after a democratic election where the constitution says that this is a non-racial country, and you saw something calling itself the Black Business Council, you would be quite entitled to assume that you needed grease palms to do business. It doesn't send the right signal.
But we've got black economic empowerment. That's been around for more than a decade. And are you suggesting that people see black economic empowerment as an opportunity to grease palms?
Yeah, I think it has been badly abused. I think black economic empowerment and affirmative action, I both have a problem with both, not as philosophies, but as the way they have operated. It really, affirmative action tended to get down to a quota system. And I think if I was a black professional, I'd feel hugely insulted at assuming that I was working for a large auditing firm simply because of the colour of my skin. And I know one or two people who do feel that. But that's moved on, and I don't think that's as much of a problem now. I mean, there obviously had to be massive changes made in 94, 96, right up to 2000, and still today. I don't have any problem with that. For me, black economic empowerment has, and I know there are members of the ANC and the unions who've made similar criticism, so we at one on this, has benefited a few. There hasn't been the trickle down that there should have been, and I would much have preferred to have seen a mentoring system where let's say aspiring black companies could look to white business and white businessmen, people like Raymond Ackerman and Donald Gordon in his day and Brian Joffe, for guidance. I don't believe any of those businessmen, and Donald Gordon is sort of more retired now, but I don't believe any of those businessmen would say, I'm sorry, we're not sharing our secrets with you. I think they're all bright enough to know that the more business we do in South Africa, within South Africa and internationally, the better off we're going to be. And I go back to this thing, there is this absolute crisis that we do need to create jobs, and we're not doing it. And
how is the formation of a Black Business Council anti-creating jobs? Because let's go back to the reasons why they felt that they needed to pull out of Business Unity South Africa. They felt undermined. They felt that there was no equity within Business Unity South Africa. So if after 9 years you feel, well, hello, I'm not being heard, nothing's changing, surely you have a right to step back.
You certainly do, but I then question how they could not come to some sort of agreement. I mean, let's be honest. The legislation brought in since the ANC got in hasn't been particularly friendly to companies. I mean, the labour laws are quite stringent. It's quite difficult to get rid of people who aren't any good. It doesn't encourage people to open businesses. It doesn't encourage, more particularly, people with a small amount of capital to start their own businesses because, they know that they're going to be hauled in front of the CCMA for the slightest thing. Makes life difficult. And I hear a lot of reports of stories like that. Now, I think if the members of the Black Business Council, and I respect their decision on this, felt that they weren't getting value as a member of BUSA, I would think that they really should be there arguing the point toss until they get value, because, they do have their own government behind them. It's not as if they're fighting an apartheid government. It's not as if they're a minority. We're talking about 80% of the demographic. Everything is on their side. They've got everything going for them, and they still have to stomp out of BUSA and say, this isn't jolly well fair, we want to start our own club. As we've seen before, their own clubs very often haven't worked because there then will be infighting amongst them somewhere down the line. We just delay. I don't know what the fights were all about. I just think that it shows a lack of maturity to not be able to come to some decision.
Would you ascribe that lack of maturity on both sides, though?
Because, very definitely. But I don't know what the fights have been about. I mean, what have people said? It's been very vague. People said, no, you're jolly well not going to be able to take over the mines. Well, we have black ownership of the mines. Let's forget nationalisation, which is a gaga idea, because the government can make more money out of mining by taxing it than it can by owning them. Who on earth wants to pump out a flooded mine? Who on earth wants to be responsible for safety and security? That's a different issue.
Look, the nationalisation, I don't think, is one of their issues at all. Their issues, I think, are around, as they say, firstly, the voice of black business being heard, support for black business, equity. We live in a country where the playing field, we have to be honest about this, is still not level.
But it doesn't actually need to be level if we are really looking at business, because the point of my article really was saying it really doesn't matter. I don't give a damn, who runs my local Spar shop or my local supermarket, as long as the shelves are well stocked. I don't think we are still in a stage where I'm not saying, I'm not buying from him because he's white, or I'm not buying from her because she's black. So I think this is a sort of a red herring, with respect, and this is part of the thrust of my article, to say that it shouldn't matter in a country that desperately needs to create jobs what colour the businessman is. And what colour business is. That's a historical accident. That's the problem. We can live with that historical accident, and I would have full respect if people want to go that way, but then we mustn't start crying when we don't get jobs created. And when people overseas in a very, very tough global environment don't look with sympathy at us. I mean, I think we had a honeymoon period where we were the Rainbow Nation. There was the Mandela honeymoon. We actually let that slip through our fingers. We didn't make the most of that. And we've really missed many, many opportunities over the past 18 years. The sad thing is that the balance sheet of South Africa, from a people point of view, is very strong. And we're not actually making the most of our assets. There's too much squabbling going on. I mean, that would be my observation and my opinion, and certainly coming in from other people. So it's not, I don't have a problem with black businessmen getting together for common interest. I have a problem with them calling themselves the Black Business Council, and I have a problem with them sort of not being playing open cards and saying, right, okay, let's all get together, thrash out our problems, which I'm quite certain they have the intelligence to do, and to move ahead and present a unified front to foreign business, to foreign investors.
So if they'd called themselves the Business Council, we would not be having this conversation.
I think Confederation of British Industry, Confederation of South African Industry would work just as well. I think the name hasn't helped. It remains to be seen. They may surprise us and be absolutely wonderful. And in a year's time, we'll be talking, and I'll be sort of eating my hat and saying, it was a terrible mistake. What's in a name? The guys have done fantastically and created jobs. But I've got a nagging feeling that may not be the case.
I think one of the things that we in this country, we tend to focus on the shortcomings of politicians. But you made the point that we squandered the opportunity of that, Rainbow Nation, and I put that in inverted commas today. And today, with this, I'm starting to wonder if we've just haven't focused enough on what's going on within business. If 9 years down the line after the formation of Business Unity South Africa, things are now falling apart, maybe we do need to take a closer look at what's happening in the business fraternity.
I think we do, and I think we do need all businessmen involved. There's the accusation that white business is against black business. I don't see that can be logical. I think anyone continuing to do business in this country post 1994 was obviously on the side of South Africa. You may find one or two guys who actually were here for a quick buck, but I think anyone who's got the infrastructure, like people like Pick and Pay, have created jobs, are here to stay. They're here for the country, and it seems to me complete and utter nonsense to suggest that there should be this division between black businessmen and Indian businessmen and white businessmen. I mean, in my experience of business, and I ran a company of my own a small company of my own for 10 years, most people want to try and make money. Therefore, if they can do business with you and make money, that's what they're going to do. And they're not going to say, excuse me, are you white, are you black, are you Indian? They're going to say, is this the right price? Yes, it is, thank you. Can you deliver next week? We've done business. But that's just domestic. I mean, I think internationally we really do need to get our act together.
Let me read this SMS to you, David. It's from Spiwo in KZN, who says, David is not black. He should just leave blacks to deal with themselves. He should go and tell Afrikaner Forum that they are divisive and should stop defending Afrikaans. How do you respond to that?
Well, it may well be right. But I don't think that my skin colour is a problem in a non-racial society. So if he's got a problem with me being white, then the problem is his, not my problem. My tax goes in twice a year. I'm not behind with any taxes. I've created a fair amount of tax over the 30 years that I've been here. So it sounds almost like a racial abuse.
What about the AfriForum question? Because you said you had a problem with the Black Business Council.
With AfriForum as a business?
The name.
No, I don't have a problem with that because I don't think it's as essential. It's an interest group, and I don't have a problem with that in the sense that our economy doesn't really rely, with the greatest respect to them, to AfriForum. Our economy relies, and according to most of our senior cabinet ministers, on creating new jobs. That means business. It's important to remember, and I think many listeners forget, that a government doesn't have any money. It doesn't produce anything. The government only has what it can borrow and what it can raise in taxes. And if it's running a successful nationalised industry, which it isn't, and that's not an accusation on this government, the British government did just as badly with British Leyland. If you happen to be running a successful nationalised industry, then you've got revenue coming in from that as well. But most governments, most politicians are not businessmen, which is why they're politicians, and they don't run very successful industries. So let's laugh off the nationalised industries, and let's just really look at what a government does. A government is there not to create jobs, because it cannot create jobs. A government can invent jobs in the civil service, which is what has happened to Greece. And Greece is a big wagging warning finger, folks, I reckon, out there, because if, you've seen Zimbabwe, you've seen Greece, I think God's on our side. He keeps sending us warnings, and those warnings are as applicable to South Africa as they are to any other country. But the real thing that government should be doing is creating an environment that is conducive to investment and conducive to the creation of jobs. We have it in the motor industry. We have been very successful in the motor industry, and long may that continue. We have it in other industries as well. We're not a basket case, but we could be far better than a basket case if everyone started pulling in the same direction.
Well, the spokesperson for the Black Business Council has called in Sandile Zungu on the line with us now, so we're going to put him on and hear his views on this one. And we're going to take calls as well on 0891104207. SMSs to 34701. Sandile, good morning.
Good morning, Siki, and good morning to David.
Good morning, Sandile.
What do you make of what you've heard so far from David Bullard?
Well, first I must express my appreciation that David refrained from name-calling, labeling us racist, and I appreciate his view that he thinks that we're not constructive into the far creation. We obviously differ with that. We can go back and say, the Black Business Council was formed, the original Black Business Council was formed after democracy, as it correctly says in its article in 1996. And it was dissolved in 2003 to give space to Musa. Because we thought that Musa the representative will drive the agenda of transformation. And in it, we as black business will also see ourselves. The fact of the matter is that since
Sandile, your line is deteriorating. I'm going to put you on hold, and we'll see if we can just resolve that, because I also want to get some clarity from you on the reasons for the split now. The questions that David was asking a little bit earlier. We'll talk about that, and we're going to take calls as well on 0891104207. SMSs to 34701. Dennis is where hope. Stay on the line for me.
Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
On SAFM 104 to 107. Let's take some calls, David. Let's hear from Dennis in PE. Hi, Dennis.
Hello, Siki. I just wanted to say that it's a pity that the members from the Black Business Council are not present in the studio today. I would have liked to have heard their side of their view on this issue.
We're just waiting for Sandile to get back on the line. As I said earlier, they declined to comment at the time, but he has now called in. So when we get him on, I'm going to put those questions to him as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think it's naive to suggest that business in South Africa, or that black businesses should not, or the core function of businesses to create jobs in South Africa at this point in time. Businesses are not concerned with the creation of jobs. Businesses are concerned primarily with creating profit. The creation of jobs is probably a secondary interest. It's naive to suggest that in a new South Africa there's no need for in business, at least black businesses advocating their own cause, because it's quite clear from that the business Unity South Africa was not primarily focused on black businesses, which is something natural. It's natural. It's natural to for black businesses. Black businesses have a unique angle on this kind of, because they come. Yeah. Black businesses come from a different environment. They come from a different history. So I think it's completely justified in modern South Africa for black businesses to seek to advocate their own cause.
All right. Let me hear what Sandile has to say. We've got him back on the line. Thanks, Dennis. Bye. Sandile Zungu, spokesperson of the BBC. If we can just... can lock Sandile's down line. Hi, Sandile, are you back with me?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, much better. Sorry. Let's just pick up where you left off.
Okay, my apology for the bad line. But what I was saying is it must always be remembered where we come from. 2003, we formed BUSA as the Black Business Council of then, as well as the Business South Africa, BSA. And we dissolved ourselves. BSA added an L and called itself Business Leadership South Africa, which continues to obviously advocate the interests of big business. And we really had high hopes that BUSA will represent the interests of black business. We had a black president, we had a black CEO, inaugural CEO, which was Bheki Sibiya. 8 years, maybe let's say 10 years later, BUSA is a lost cause as far as black business is concerned. Transformation has ceased to be a priority. The agenda of BUSA is dominated by the priorities of big business and white business interests. And we clearly felt that we could not continue in that fashion, and we had to resuscitate BBC. But we spent, subsequent to that, a lot of time talking to BUSA with a view to reconfiguring BUSA so that we can continue to participate in BUSA. Remember that the majority of our members have suspended their participation, they've not fully pulled out of BUSA.
Okay.
And so the desire from our side was that we should reconfigure BUSA so that fundamentally it centralized the principle of equality, which was one of the founding statutes of BUSA. And we had 8 meetings with the leadership of BUSA. And at one of the meetings, we had about 5 people from BBC and the junior official from BUSA. That's the seriousness with which BUSA considered our discussions. And so our view was that, look, this is the final straw. We're not being taken seriously here. But in any case, we have an objective to organize black business and to really stake our claim in the economic discourse. I agree with David that the priority is to create jobs in this country. It is to deal with inequalities, which are very entrenched. It is to deal with poverty, but also, most importantly, it is to grow the economy. We are committed to all of this as black business.
But you couldn't do it within BUSA?
BUSA, as far as we're concerned, has become a lost cause. And it does not embrace transformation as we see it. And it has clearly said they don't want equality. So as far as I'm concerned, it's the winner takes all. The Goliath must run the show, and the David has got no place in it. And clearly we don't subscribe to that principle. As BBC, we have to fight our own cause, and we have a huge responsibility to fight for the interests of black business. But at the same time, we've got a huge responsibility to assist our social partners in labor and in government towards fighting against inequality on a daily basis.
I'm going to ask you to pause there, but here's one question I wanted to ask you, and maybe you can just expand on it after headlines, are the interests of black business completely different to those of white business in South Africa, and in what ways? I'm going to ask you that question, and I'll hear what David has to say about what you've said now, and we'll take some calls as well and some SMS.
Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
On SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader, talking about the relaunch of the Black Business Council, in conversation this morning with David Bullard, who's a columnist and author, as well as Sandile Zungu, who's spokesperson of the Black Business Council. And Sandile, there was a question I left you with just before the headlines. I'm going to ask you to answer that. David, you pick up from there, and then we'll take some calls. So Hope, Pat, Mzwandile, and Sig, stay on the line.
Siki, am I on the line?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I think I will respond to your question very shortly. I just want to respond to one or two things that were mentioned much earlier, which are very important as a point, departure point. The name Black Business Council, what's wrong with it? The question should be asked, what is wrong with Jewish Board of Deputies? What is wrong with German Chamber of Commerce in South Africa? And so on and so forth. Why is it a problem when black people choose to assert themselves in terms of how they call themselves? Why do people find a problem? And I have a problem with the examples made, for example, where black is a pseudonym for corruption, greasing the palms, and it's a pseudonym for affirmative action or incompetence. And at the same time, in the same vein, white business and white business people are mentioned with accolades, Raymond Ackerman, Joffe. That happy characterization of white people in our society is one that troubles us a great deal. And when we assert ourselves and we call ourselves black without being and undermining other people, we're being discouraged. We must call ourselves what? Non-white business council or native business council. I mean, we've got a serious problem with those things. Right. Our view is on the issue of business interests. Black business interests should, under normal circumstances, be no different to those of white business. For example, we all desire for this economy to grow. We all desire for the government to play a role that is not over-dominant in the economy. We like to see ourselves regulating ourselves. Those are all interests of business globally. But the fact of the matter is that given the history where we come from, we have a situation where 18 years into our democracy, we have 5% of the economy owned by black people. And even the most optimistic study done by the GSE puts the ownership of the economy by black people at less than 20%. Whichever way you look at it, it's paltry. It's something that needs to be discouraged. And therefore, that says on the ownership question of the economy, we have peculiar interests as black business. We want to own more. On the issue of management, you look at the organizations in the GSE, how many are black CEOs, how many are black CFOs, and so on and so forth. I'm even limiting this thing at a superficial level. Once we go on to issues of enterprise development, how many black organizations receive support from black business, or from big business? You'll actually recognize that black people are receiving a very raw deal in this national economy. And someone has got to talk for them. Okay. And we're quite clear that BUSA, in as much as on paper it talks about business unity, it had no passion, it had no interest and desire to champion these issues. Right. Irrespective of who runs it, whether that person is black, whether it's a black CEO or a black president or a black chairman or a black this or that, it's really superficial. The fact of the matter is that fundamentally, black business have felt left out, have felt overlooked, have felt undermined, and it cannot continue. Now, otherwise, we're inviting a serious trouble down the line. Future generations will judge us very harshly for having allowed the situation to continue unabated.
All right. Let me hear what David has to say, and I've got to take those calls as well. In fact, I want us to talk about the name issue first, David, because there's an SMS here as well that says, Siki, is your guest implying that anything that has blacks is considered requiring greasing by internationals? So I think we need to deal with that.
You want to do that one first?
Yeah, I want to deal with the name. Yeah. So what Sandile has said about the name, what also the SMS
I think it's perceptions, and I think I agree with some of the things that Sandile said, disagree with others. I think that it doesn't actually matter in a non-racial society, which we are apparently in, what colour a businessman is and who owns what of what. And over a period of time that will change. But if it does matter, then we must announce to the world that we're a racial society. We can't mess around. We can't have it always. We say, listen, we're a racial society. Laws will be promulgated to make sure that the black population own more of the economy by hook or by crook. We must make that absolutely clear to people. I find it very odd that there was a problem with BUSA, with powerful black businessmen. This is not a regulatory body. This is a body representing black interests, and Sandile's already said they had black people as chairman, staff. Why the hell didn't you go to them and tell them, to push off and replace them with people who could represent your interests. If you can't even control a body that actually is supposed to be speaking on your behalf, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to go convince us that, there should be a great new group which is going to carry forward black business. If you can't even control an administrative body like that, I think things are quite dangerous.
All right, let's take some calls. Hope in Johannesburg. Hi, Hope.
Good morning, Siki, and to your guest. I must say the patronizing attitude of your guest is very, very, very worrying. It reminds me of people who wanted even the ANC to change its name African National Congress after 1994. And the branches of the ANC rejected that notion that the name African is a problem. He makes subtle remarks about corruption, associating it with blacks. And this is the problem. Whenever black people want to meet and say we want to talk among ourselves, there's always a problem. But worse, the council said white people can join the council as long as they accept need for radical change in the business sector, and they accept that we have a colonial and apartheid legacy. Now, I want your guest to answer. The ANC strategy and tactics talks about the liberation of African people in particular and black people in general. Now, according to him, it means it's racist, and he stood on a platform of the ANC in 2009 saying he supports the ANC in the campaign. I think that this is the problem is people like him who think they can come and dictate to South Africans using the scare of foreign direct investment and the international community. You cannot talk of that when you have not addressed, because addressing the socio-economic conditions of the majority will help to build a non-racial society.
All right. Thanks, Hope. I'll see what David has to say about that. I'll give you a chance to respond in a moment. Mzwandile in Johannesburg, good morning.
Good morning, Zikele. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Excuse me, and to your guest. I think one of the things that we need to be able to look at as a country, if we love this country, is that we need to sort out things now before they become out of hand. Because what is happening in this country is that what the technical has just said is that we are always being scared of foreign investment, that if we do this, the foreign investment will run away and stuff like that. If the foreign investment are able to go and do business with China, a communist country, so I don't see any reason why they can't come and do business with us, especially if we know what is it that we want as a country. And for me, what I can say is that I was very disappointed to read an article that was written by Mr. Sibia. What I'd like to say to BBC guys is that previously what was once said by Malcolm X was that during the slavery time that there was a house nigger and a field nigger, and the field nigger always wanted change. Hence, the house nigger always felt that wherever he was staying was a better place. So that's the problem that we are having. We've got people within the black people who feel that we are not supposed to advance certain things because they are getting something out of wherever they are. We need to push for transformation, because if we don't transform now, in 20 years, 30 years' time, whereby people will be feeling that the country is stable, we are going to have the same revolts that we had in the Arab countries.
All right. Thanks, Mzandile. Mike in Newlands. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Sigi. Really interesting show, and quite a brave one, I must say. It's such a rather depressing subject, and I'm really saddened that we're actually even having the debate. But having said all that, I really just find it disappointing that an organization that calls itself black is just not what we need in this country. I mean, I fought with the ANC, voted for the ANC, and I did not vote for organizations to brand themselves as black or white. That's not what this country is about. I fully appreciate where the blacks are coming from, because we know they had a rough deal and a tough time, and that's putting it mildly. But the fact of the matter is, if we're going to build a non-racial society, we've got to take the colour thing out of it, because at the end of the day, yes, I know if you're black you've had a tough time, but the thing is, you're just going to have to deal with it in the sense that take up the challenge. Once you start fomenting different little groups, then now we've got the black group, we've got the white group, and in 10 years' time from now, it'll be them and us. And we had that wonderful period that David talked about when Mandela came out of jail. That was that fantastic period when colour was not an issue. Now, and the sadness is that the government seems to support this kind of thing, which is an absolute tragedy. Zuma thinks it's a great idea. Cabinet ministers go along and shake hands. How sad is that? We should be not talking about black or white. We should be talking about South Africans in business. Who cares what colour they are? It's just very, very sad. And one final thing I'd have to ask is what is actually the intention? Because I don't understand where the benefit of calling yourself black is. There must be an underlying reason, because I don't believe that black people are so weak that they cannot stand up for themselves. It really is. It just doesn't. It's very sad. I don't believe it's a true reflection on the blacks in this country.
All right, I'll hear what Sandile has to say. Thanks, Mike. Let me read some SMSs. I'll get my guest to respond before we take any more calls. Someone says, would your guest have a problem with an organization called the White Business Forum? Is it Abel who says, Sibaya must join his Masters AfriForum and leave the BBC alone? Gerson in Cape Town says, I am a black businessman. To do business with white people is on time, good quality, job done on first time. That is how white like. Huh? Gerson, please resend. I don't understand that. Mangali in Mahikeng says, Black Business Council is 100% right. And if Africa has done business with Zimbabwe, it could not have gone down the drain. And there's a Christian who says, business and chieftaincy don't go together. Black businessmen indulge in business to be kings. And Anthony says 4 billion rand is given in corporate grants every year. And Matt says, Siki, your guest is being untruthful. Most black people cannot even enter the business world because of a lack of collateral that white people have. And Seppo says, why are you allowing them to call in when they declined your invitation to be on the show? That's totally wrong. Seppo, I'd rather have them than have the other idea than to, and then the other viewpoint than to, to be spiteful for whatever reason. And someone says, David, you are brutally dishonest. We are better without opinion makers like you. Go back to wherever you come from. And LB in PE says, another racist organization. That's why they declined. Bullard is too polite. What paper does he write for now? And someone says, BBC has done the right thing and it's long overdue. Economic freedom will never be achieved if we mix issues. And Pio says, we support the establishment of BBC and they should know that every white-dominated sector will always put a pawn to dismiss black initiatives. So those being some of your SMSs. We'll read more, but let's get some responses. I'm going to start with you, David, and then Sandile, I'll hear from you.
So much to speak about. I would utterly reject a white business council, and the answer to that question there, I think it's just as obscene as a black business council in a modern South Africa. But going back to Hope, who was a little emotional, I do realise there, and did go on about corruption and it being linked to blacks. I think the fact is, Hope, that I do read quite a lot of newspapers, as you do. There is a very, very high instance of corruption. It comes because of the ANC government. The ANC government, because of the nature of the makeup of the party, is predominantly black. Therefore, I'm talking about perceptions. But the fact is that there is corruption. So don't come on the line and say that this is all imagined, because you know jolly well that if the money that had gone to the arms deal had gone elsewhere, there'd be an awful lot more people uplifted. So let's not pretend. Transformation has been a word that's been bandied around. I'm not quite sure what it means, but it's a very nice word to keep people in their place until there's some sort of delivery. As far as people coming to deal in South Africa are concerned, they would do anyway. I think the second caller said, no, they won't. Grow up, guys. Grow up. No one has to deal with us unless we have something to sell them or have some service to offer. We do have minerals under the ground, so they can come and dig those out. So our business with the Chinese will probably be more beneficial to the Chinese than it will to us. But no one has to do business with us. And you must understand that. And this is what this is all about. If the Black Business Council come up with lots of fabulous ideas for business and they're productive and they make lots of money and they create lots of jobs, we will all be absolutely delighted. Particularly anyone who pays tax will be delighted to have more people in the tax-paying net, because quite frankly, with 3.5 million taxpayers at the moment, 3.5 to 4 million, it will be awfully nice to have 9 million. So I wish, whatever they call themselves, the Black Business Council or whoever, every success. I do hope that things work well. I can't understand why it didn't work with Busa, and I can't accept that there is no money available if there's collateral. But let's get real as well. When you go to a bank and say, I'm thinking of starting a business, the bank is custodian of my money, your money, and everyone else's money. It's not going to hand money out unless there's a business plan. So don't just go along there and say, we're not being allowed to play in the business world. It's not fair. Your government has been in charge for 18 years. There's no legislation saying that you can't start a business. If you haven't got the collateral or the ideas, or you haven't made it attractive enough, when businesses started anywhere in the world, you had to raise capital. That's what share capital was all about. You had to believe that someone digging a hole in the ground in the Transvaal was going to discover gold. And if they didn't, you lost your money. That's what capitalism is about, folks. That's the way it works. It is not a handout. And government, as I've already said, have no money. They have no money to hand out. So forget transformation, because it's a very cuddly word. Get down to some hard business.
So you really believe that people who are not accessing capital from our banks is because they just don't have viable business ideas?
I think it's the banks went out of their way, I think, Ziki, to actually make capital available to a good idea. But when we started our business, and it was back in 87, everything was hocked. You have to hand over your car, your house. If anything goes wrong, the banks win every time. We know that. But if you have another business, you go to private equity, say, listen, I've got this fantastic idea for a tourist company. I'm going to do this, this, and this. You go to a private equity company. You can go to a whole load of people and raise capital if they think the idea is good. But you're not going to give me, I want to start a new magazine, and you think it's a rubbish idea. You're not going to give me a cent. If you think it's a great idea, and I can show you a business plan, I've said I've already got 50 advertisers, then you'll think, hey, I want a share of this. That's the way it works.
Sandile?
Well, a couple of things to respond to.
Yeah.
Number one, on the issue of corruption, we as the Black Business Council are obviously concerned about corruption. And we're not the only ones who are concerned. Even the ruling party, the ANC, is equally concerned. All of us are concerned about corruption, and we can assure South Africa that we'll be putting our hands on the wheel to fight against corruption, because we think it robs the poor. And irrespective of where it comes from, whether it's being perpetrated by people who call themselves adherents or followers or members of the Black Business Council, we will denounce corruption. Again, that shows that the interests of white business or black business are the same when it comes to certain issues. When it comes to the issue of a membership of Black Business Council, I think I must state here for the record that the founding members of the Black Business Council are national black organizations. But we have been very clear in our constitution that the membership will be allowed to come from diverse, as long as people are committed to the notion of black people taking and playing a meaningful role in the national economy. And these may be traditionally white corporations, multinational organizations in the instance of corporations, or traditionally white organizations in the case of organizations will be open, but obviously will assess each application on its own merit. So we clearly are very firm that we shall not be racist if people like Mr. Spear have chosen to call us such. But we are very firm that the name black is positive as far as we are concerned. And if people associate it with the negatives, whether it's incompetence or corruption, tough luck. No, we shall call ourselves Black Business Council. For so long as we feel we're in the minority in the national economy, we shall characterize ourselves the way we so choose. But we are clearly concerned about matters of perception, and we shall do something about it. And we see ourselves as a constructive player in the national economy. We are not formed out of a knee-jerk reaction or out of the negative. We think we've got a meaningful role to play in the discourse, and we shall do just that.
All right, I'm going to take some quick calls and then quick SMSs, and then we'll wrap up our conversations. Busi, so please be brief in Newcastle.
I think, I just couldn't take, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please be brief for me.
I just couldn't take the kind of insult from your guest there, being a black person in South Africa. Look, Hope has hit the nail on the head. You see, the problem is that he speaks as if he has got no idea of the plight of black people when they aspire to opening businesses. Look at what has happened, for instance, in people who owned shops in black townships. They have all basically been eliminated by, if I could use the word, foreigners. And nobody is ready to take the course for these particular people. All they are doing now, they are receiving rent from Pakistanis and other people. And nobody can tell me that the so-called Busa can stand up for these particular people. And every time that issues economic have to be raised, they say you must remove the issue of color in the equation. It's just impossible. I don't know where this guy comes from. It's totally unbelievable what I'm hearing.
All right, thanks, Swiss. I'm going to leave it there with the calls because otherwise we're going to run out of time. Here's some messages on Facebook. Michael Clady says, I'm not sure if it's only me, but keeping opening businesses in the name of race like black, white, Indian, etc. brings racial discrimination mentality into our society. I would understand those who feel that it is not a good idea. However, our democracy gives all of us every right to do whatever we wish, but I think we should be careful when we applaud such things. And a tweet from Ngodube who says, there wouldn't be a need for the likes of BBC if White Inc. and government were serious about transformation and black aspirations. So, David, I'll start with you, and Sandile, I'll give you a final word.
Well, I'd just like to wish Black Business Council every success, and I take what Sandile says quite seriously. I do hope they succeed. I think the last wacky call we had is still living in the past of life is unfair, and it's smacked of xenophobia there as well, that anyone coming in to run a more successful business in your area who isn't from your race group therefore must be eliminated. I think that's extremely dangerous, and I'm sure Sandile would agree with me on that as well. But I just think that I get back to the earlier thing, I think anything that creates jobs, anything that actually creates a better understanding, anything that brings businessmen together and makes South Africa more successful as we should be, and we're really lagging, I would fully support. Good luck to you.
Sandile?
Well, I can tell you that times are tough for black people in business, and they had hoped that their membership of BUSA will possibly take them somewhere forward. It has not happened. And the resuscitation of Black Business Council represents the hopes and aspirations of these people. And we dare fail them. We dare not fail them. We shall obviously work very hard to advance their interests, ranging from access to capital to better trading conditions in the CBDs, to becoming industrialists of the ilk of Anglo and so on and so forth. And so our view is that we need to de-racialize society. That's what the Reconstruction and Development Program aspired to. That's what the ANC's niche strategies and tactics document says. That's what all the parties, whether it's the DA, aspire to, that we need to de-racialize the economy. But it cannot happen artificially. And therefore, the recreation of the Black Business Council is a very important, meaningful step towards accelerating change in the economy.
Sandy, let me ask you this. Is there unity within black business itself just as a separate entity? Because we know the divisions and the dramas that we saw, for example, within NAFCOC in the past.
Well, I think black business is by no way a homogeneous grouping. We have had diverse interests. We've got diverse ways in which we look at issues, ranging from nationalization to labor broking, to e-tolling, for example. But that's the very essence of having people to meet and constructively deal with issues. And we shall have a positive influence even on some of our affiliates, that the warring and the infighting must be kept at a bare minimum at worst and be done away with at best.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much to both of you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David.
Thanks,
it's David Bullard, columnist and author, as well as Sandile Zungu, spokesperson of the Black Business Council. 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 The Black